Hello, welcome back to the latest We Are Sunderland briefing with myself, Dom Short and Scott Wilson, and we're recording this on Monday afternoon, 24 hours or so after Sunderland got another point in the Premier League, a 1-1 draw at home to Aston Villa on Sunday. And despite the victories over Brentford and West Ham that had come before, Scott, you reckoned that yesterday's result was potentially Sunderland's best of the most impressive of the season so far?
Yeah, I think you can definitely make the case for that. I mean, I think what it did was it probably, I think, said more about Sunderland's ability to survive and kind of flourish in the Premier League than either of the wins over West Ham and Brentford, because West Ham, massive tick in the box for Sunderland's second half performance there, but West Ham were dreadful. It was the first game of the season. There was kind of all the excitement around it and everything like that. It felt like, quite a number of things fell kind of Sunderland's way in that one. Brentford, yes, absolutely, real spirit and character to win it in the way that they did late on. But this was a different level, this. I mean, an hour with 10 men. And I know Villa are in a real rut at the minute. And I was staggered by how bad Villa were for big chunks of yesterday's game. But even so, this is a team who are going to be playing Bologna on Thursday night. This is a team who, for all that they've started awfully, I cannot imagine Villa are going to stay down in the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the Premier League this season. They've got Morgan Rogers, they've got Ollie Watkins, Buendia, Mings, Konza, people like that. So for Sunderland to not only have dug in and got the point, but actually being the better team for big chunks of the second half, certainly the more threatening team. I think we saw a slightly different side to Sunderland as well. We saw a tougher side. We saw the set pieces, which we've seen little glimpses of. But, I mean, for 10 or 15 minutes in that second half, every time Sunderland got a long throw or a corner, you felt like there was a good chance they were going to score. And, like I said, this is Villa with Mings, Konza, big physical experience centre-halves, and yet Sunderland were causing them all kind of problems. The resolve, the spirit, everything about it. And it just made me think, do you know what? We've been looking at these games, say, in December and thinking, well, we can almost write that month off. Sunderland, if Sunderland go in like that and play with that kind of spirit, organisation, resolve, be a threat of set pieces, hit on the break, there's a chance they can take something from any game in the Premier League, I think. And that was my big takeaway from yesterday, that, do you know what? Even against the top teams in this league, I'll give Sunderland a puncher's chance of at least being a threat.
And it felt like, because it was a prime slot on a Sunday afternoon on Sky, just like reading the reaction on social, seeing various things floating around today, it feels like the secret's out, if there was a secret there on Sunderland, doesn't it? People who haven't seen a lot of Sunderland, didn't know an awful lot about them, maybe didn't know a lot about the signings who come in. It feels like yesterday's performance was one that really made people sit up and take notice.
Yeah, well, when I was driving back from the game, funnily enough, I had the misfortune, really, of listening to 606 with Messrs. Sutton and Savage. But Chris Sutton had been at the game, to be fair to him. He was in the press room before and after at the stadium. And he was saying, I think I got Sunderland wrong. I had Sunderland nailed on to get relegated. I don't think this Sunderland team will get relegated. And I think you're right. I think there is now, we're starting to see a bit of a shift of people waking up to the fact that actually there's a lot of quality in this Sunderland team. They're really well organised under Regis Le Bris. They're big, they're physical, they put themselves about, they want to mix it. And yeah, I think people are seeing Sunderland in a different light now. The start of the season, we're quite happy just to say, well, Sunderland will get relegated. Got out via the playoffs, made all these changes, blah, blah, blah. There's no way they'll stay up. I think now we're seeing people coming around the way of thinking that, do you know what? We've been a bit hasty writing this team off.
Reinildo, no complaints to sending off?
No. When I saw it in real time, and I thought he might get away with it. I thought it looked really inconsequential. And it was pretty inconsequential. But the reality is you just can't do it. He has a little flick with his first leg, doesn't he? And if he'd left it at that, he might have got away with it. But then he flicks again with his second leg. Definitely catches Cash. Yes, Cash makes an absolute meal of it. But I was chatting to Phil Smith from the Sunderland Echo in the press room afterwards, and we were both kind of saying, well, why wouldn't he? If that happens to a Sunderland player, then you're wanting your Sunderland player to make the most of it, because there's every chance they will get the opponent sent off. So he should know better, shouldn't he? And Regis Le Bris, to be fair to him, couldn't really have been any stronger post-match in basically saying, yeah, he's let himself down there. There's no point in us making a song and dance about that, because really he's got to know better than that. And it'll have repercussions, because he's now going to face a 3-match ban. It's violent conduct. It'll be 3 games. It's going to be the middle of October by the time he's back, by which point Sunderland will have Dennis Serkin back. They will have Adji Alazy back. They will have Luke O'Nien back. So, it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens in that left back position. But he's not made life easy for himself with that Reinildo. He's been very impressive in the opening stage of the season. So I think he will have a bit of credit in the bank. But I absolutely have no doubt that Regis Le Bris was leaving the stadium last night thoroughly disappointed in him.
A kick into the midriff, as you politely put it in your copy on
yes,
on Sunday.
Yes.
We'll get to how Le Bris deals with that at Forest at the weekend. But something else that was in your copy was what Le Bris had said about how Xhaka responded to it, and how Granit Xhaka had said in the changing room afterwards, maybe called on his experience of having been a bit fiery in the past, hasn't he? That is something that you might have seen from Granit Xhaka 5, 6, 7 years ago, and he used his experience to talk to the players in the dressing room about the fact to keep cool heads. Yeah,
that's exactly it, because Sunderland need to be niggly, don't they? I was really pleased with a lot of that with Sunderland yesterday. They made life really awkward for Villa. They were narky. They were in their faces at set pieces, like I say, pulling, shoving, pushing. Every time there was a set piece, the referee was having to get involved to break things up and talk to people. And you you don't want this Sunderland team to be overawed or be pushed around or anything like that. But by the same token, they can't be playing with 10 men every week. So, the line is there, and you can go right up to it, but you can't go across it. And that seemed to be what Le Bris was saying, that Xhaka's kind of message had been that, yes, we need to keep that in our game. We need to be aggressive. We need to be on the front foot. We need to make life really awkward for these Premier League teams we're coming up against. But we need to keep clear heads. We can't be kicking out. We can't be lashing out. We can't be pushing out, all of this. Because ultimately, yes, Sunderland did incredibly well to get a point out of that game. If they keep on getting men sent off, then they're not going to keep on being able to get those results, are they? So it goes without saying that, a line's being drawn. And I think that was Le Bris's message as well, that, I'm disappointed in him, but once the dust settled, we'll probably gloss over this one. But it's a line in the sand now. I don't want my players doing that again.
Had Dennis Serkin been available, it's a like-for-like swap, and it's probably the type of opportunity that Serkin would have come back needing and wanting.
Yeah.
But he's not available yet. Obviously, Le Bris went to a back 3, a back 5 on Sunday. What will he do at Forest, do you think? Because he has options, doesn't he? Waku can play there at left back. Alderete can play at left back, we're told, can't he? You've got the option.
Yeah.
Then do you want to break up your defensive pairing, given how good he's been? Or does he start with the back 3 that he moved to on Sunday?
Yeah.
What do you think he'll go for at the City?
I'm with you. I don't think he'll want to split up Mukiele and Alderete unless he absolutely has to. And that's even with Dan Ballard now being absolutely back into the equation. They have been so good in these last 2 games. They were brilliant at Palace. They were absolutely brilliant, the pair of them yesterday. I think he'll be loath to do that. So what does that then mean? Masuaku feels like the obvious one, doesn't he? He has played as an out-and-out left-back for big chunks of his career. He was obviously on the bench yesterday. He played in the Carabao Cup game, didn't he? Although not as a fullback. He could switch Trey Hume over there. He did that at various stages in the in the promotion season. But then again, that's kind of just solving one problem to create another, isn't it? Because then we're going to move to right back. So my gut feeling would be stay as a flat back four and play Masuaku.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you go to a 5, that does mean you get Ballard in. You play the 3 centre halves, but it was once in an absolute blue moon that he played with a 5 last season, wasn't it? I don't think it's something that he really wants to do, Regis Le Bris, to play with a back 5, because then you've got to change the whole rest of the way the rest of your teams play. And now, I know he went to a 5 for the second half yesterday, but clearly that was needs must, because you're playing 45 minutes with 10 men. So my gut feeling will be stick to a 4, and that probably means Masuaku.
Or the other option, because who would be the defender ideally that he wants to bring into the team? Dan Ballard.
Yeah.
So Dia bring Ballard in, move Mukwele to right back and Hume to left back. Hume's played there before.
Yeah.
Back. I know you're a bit of jugging about, but it means you get Ballard in. And
it means you get Ballard. I don't think he'd have any reservations about playing Trey Hume at left back, because he did that in big games towards the end of last season. And Trey Hume's so adaptable. I mean, there's an argument that because it means he can cut in. I mean, he scored, didn't he, a couple of games in a row playing as a left back, because it means he cuts into his right foot and he can get a shot away. So I don't think he'd have any reservation about doing that. It just means you're breaking up the centre-half pairing that's been really good.
Yeah.
You're asking Mukwele to play at right back. I'm sure he can, but he's been so good at centre-half. I don't know. A lot will come down to what level he thinks Masuaku's at.
Yeah.
If he thinks he's capable of going in and doing a perfectly solid job as a Premier League left back, then I think he does that because it's the least messing about. If he's looking at it and thinking, I'm not quite sure he's ready for that, I'm not sure what level he's at, I don't know if I trust him, then maybe you do start shuffling things around. But he seems the easiest like for like one, doesn't he?
I think the move, I know he did it yesterday, I think the move to a back 3, and I'll chop this up and get rid of it if that proves to be the case on Saturday, is the least likely.
I agree.
Because what you said there, last year he moved to a 4-4-2 when he had to.
Yeah.
When did he move to a back 3?
Yeah.
He didn't, did he? If
it
needs must on Sunday, I'd be surprised, given how well they've started the season, and given the fact he does have options. It's not like he doesn't have anyone who can
exactly
a left back. I think that's the least likely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
It's funny, isn't it? Like a couple of weeks ago, we're looking and saying, like, how does he keep all these defenders happy? And yet, all it takes is 1 or 2 things, isn't it, to suddenly. I mean, you're still going to have Gertruda probably sat on the bench, and you've still got O'Nien to come back in and various other things. But still, it just shows, doesn't it, how quickly a season can take its toll.
Things change, yeah, absolutely. And why you need these options and this cover, and why in a number of different areas he said he wants versatile players who can fill in different roles. Well, yeah, like you're right. It doesn't take an awful lot for all of a sudden, I mean, we'll get to it in a minute, I'm sure, but there's a chance I think that Diarra might be out for some kind of a lengthy spell anyway. So all of a sudden there you're thinking, right, well, how does that midfield dynamic now? We were saying last week, that's the nailed on part of the team. He will not change. There's your first choice 3. Well, already now you're looking at it and thinking, well, okay, what adaptation does that mean? So you are going to have to do it through the course of the season. There's no doubt about that.
What does it mean then? Will he pull
Diarra being out?
Yeah, will he pull the face central? Will he start? You had to feel for Rig. We'll get to that.
Yeah, you did. You really did.
What do you think he'll do with Diarra being out? Like moving.
I think he'll feel unless there's something in the way that Forest play that he is very set on and he wants to do a very specific thing for a very specific reason, then I think he'll want to give Rig a chance, because he's not a charity, is it? But I think he'll feel like, well, if that's the 3 that I thought was the next best 3, I haven't had the chance to see it properly yet. So I would think that Rig will get another opportunity. Yeah, I mean, we asked obviously on Diarra after the game, and he was a little bit evasive, I thought, Le Bris, which is unusual for him, really. He confirmed it was a muscular injury, but he basically said, we don't know yet how long it's going to be. We're waiting on results. We need to see. I mean, what that makes you think that it's more than just a couple of days, doesn't it? Hopefully the results are at the best kind of end of whatever the prognosis might be. But it makes you feel that there is at least some kind of a chance that we're talking, a potential medium to long-term thing here. Which would be a massive blow because, while there are options and while he can do it, Diarra has been excellent, hasn't he, so far this season?
Yeah, him and Siddiqui have both shown
Siddiqui was brilliant yesterday. Yeah.
It feels like we've talked about Dan Neil in so many pods and vids we've done over the last few weeks. But I guess the worrying thing if you're Dan Neil is Diarra's out, Rig comes in. Would the next option be to move Lafay inside? Suddenly, if you're Dan Neil, you're fifth, sixth in the midfield pecking order. I know he comes on and makes his Premier League debut late on Sunday, and I know there's the African Cup of Nations to come.
Yeah.
That's a worry, isn't it? For him.
It is because, Dan Neil's filled various different midfield roles at various points for his Sunderland career, hasn't he? We can't forget that for the early part, he was almost a 10. He was a very attacking midfielder, so he can do that. The issue Neil's got is that certainly for pretty much all the time under Le Bris, he's been playing in the role where Xhaka is sitting. And if there is one player that is not going to be dropped and shuffled around, then it's clearly Granit Xhaka. Now, that's not me saying that you can never play a Dan Neil and Granit Xhaka in the same midfield. Clearly you can, whether it's a 4-3-3, 4-4-2, clearly you can do that. But it's probably not the optimum for either player, because I think if Le Bris is looking at it, he's probably thinking, well, where do I think Dan Neil is best? Where Granit Xhaka's playing.
Yeah, that has to be a concern. Although we spoke to Le Bris last week about Dan Neil, and he said that he's been great in training. He's kind of responded exactly the way we'd like him to respond, and kind of almost suggested that he was showing now the level that Le Bris felt he needed to be at. The problem is, as you're saying, is the level of those in front of him, and when one misses out, but Rig gets the nod ahead of him, and then you suspect, I mean, he might be wrong, but you suspect Lafay would be the next off the rank to move into a central role.
Quite possibly, yeah.
We'll see how that plays out. Wilson Isidore, though, I had to laugh. So that stat that was doing the rounds, Isidore being the first striker, the first player to score in 3 successive home games for a promoted team. Like, it's impressive, but it's kind of one of those when you think, well, yeah, I'm not surprised that's the case, because that doesn't happen very often. But you know what I mean? That's not to do with down at all. It's still a remarkable achievement. He started the season out the team. He's not. He's very much the main man again.
Oh, absolutely! It was a brilliant finish. It was a really good finish because it was at the time of the game where you felt that if Sunderland were going to do anything, it was going to be from a set piece. They didn't really look like they were creating anything from open play. And you thought, well, if a chance comes, it's probably going to be the only one. And sure enough, it drops to Isidore. Lovely cushioned header from Xhaka. But it's a tough chance, and he takes it so well, so clinically. I mean, fair play to him, because after that West Ham game, we were raving about Mayenda, and we were kind of saying, it looks like Mayenda's seizing the chance in the same way that he did kind of at the start of last season when he came from absolutely nowhere and forced his way into the team. And you were thinking, well, when's Isidore going to get his chance? Well, he hasn't had to wait very long, and he's taken it superbly. And, yes, Mayenda's there. Yes, Brobby's there. Again, after the game yesterday, Le Bris was kind of saying, look, we've got the 3. They'll have ups. They'll have downs. There'll be times when some are looking better than others. There'll be times when they're in the team, times when they're out of the team. Well, at the minute, Wilson Isidore is making himself impossible to leave out, isn't he? And that's all you can ask for someone like him who's competing with other players for a place in the team. At the minute, I don't see any reason why you would leave Wilson Isidore out. And, all things being equal, he'll be starting at the City Ground, won't he?
It's some show of character as well, isn't it? Because we saw in the early stages of last season, and we had various players telling us shortly after Isidore had signed that, what a character, what a personality he is. But it's kind of easy to be that sort of character and figure and personality when things are going well and when you're playing and when you're scoring and Sunderland at the top of the league. But to lose his place in the team, to start the playoff final on the bench, to start the Premier League season on the bench, but to respond the way he has done, that's a show of character, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, very important as well, I think, in just setting the tone for everything, getting the fans going. I mean, him and Mukiele in that second half, every time they did anything, won a set piece, got a corner, whatever, they're jigging up the fans, they're creating the excitement around it. You know, and clearly, that's not going to keep him in the team. He needs to be doing the job on the pitch. Don't get me wrong. He needs to be scoring the goals. But I just think it is helping to feed this kind of real momentum and bond that's clearly there now between this new look team and the fans, and the momentum, the feel good factor, all of that. I think Isidore's been a big part of
that. The coming fixtures, then, we touched on this last week, Forest and Man United away.
Yeah.
This is a team in Forest who are coming off their best season in God knows how long. And then it's Man United away. You know, take out the shambolic, chaotic last couple of seasons they've had. You know, it's Man United away.
Yeah.
Previously, you'd look at that fixture as the most daunting. Like, I'm looking at those two games now and thinking, they're two good chances for Sunderland. And that's not just like, you know, getting on the hype wagon of what we've seen, but just looking at the way things have played out for Forest and Man United as well. And Ange Postecoglou hasn't won a game yet in charge of Forest. They got a point at the weekend, but there's pressure there, isn't there? Especially in a home game like that they'll see as a winnable home game against the promoted team. And I mean, Man United, even against 10-man Chelsea, they tried their best to make a mess of things at the weekend, didn't they? That's a game that you look at and think we can very quickly get the home fans on the backs of the home team.
Well, the two of them feel broadly similar to the Villa game, didn't they? Where, you know, the vid that we did last week, we were saying, you know, yes, great time to play Villa, every chance for Sunderland, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this team's going to turn it round. They're not that bad. They looked that bad yesterday. You know, they looked a really poor side. They looked laboured. They looked slow. They looked devoid of ideas. They looked disinterested for big chunks of the game. And that's probably the most damning indictment you can ever make of a group of players, isn't it? Sunderland's players in that second half wanted it more. I just think that they did. They were more committed. They were more ferocious in the tackle. They were more tearing around. They just were willing to work harder than Villa's players appeared to be. So I'm coming away from that game thinking, do you know what? I'm in the way that other people are changing their minds about Sunderland. I'm changing my mind about Villa a bit, because, you know, I thought that they'd turn it round and be still up there challenging for champions. I don't think they'll finish bottom 3 or 4, but I don't think they'll finish top 6 either. I think that there's problems that Emery's going to have to get to grips with there. So it's going to be interesting to see with both Forest and Man United, where are they actually, you know, where are they actually at? Because it feels like Forest have gone backwards a fair bit from the team under Nuno that looked like they were breaking into Champions League. But it's early days for Postecoglou. He needs to get a grip of them. You know, they've still got the bulk of the team and most of the players that got them up there. So, again, you know, are they on the brink of turning things around, or actually are they on a downward trajectory? And obviously with Man United, you know, are they ever going to sort it out under Amorim? You start to think probably not. But on their day, every now and then still throw in a performance that reminds you that they are Man United and they've got Bruno Fernandes and they've got Sesko and they've got, you know, blah, 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 blah. So I still come round to, I think again, 2 inviting opportunities for Sunderland. Feels like a reasonable time to be playing these teams, as we said before the Villa game. And certainly nothing for Sunderland to be scared of. Put it like that. Like you say, in seasons gone by, Man United away, write it off, you know, rest your players, damage limitation, come away with a 2-0 defeat, job done, get on to the next game. It's certainly not that, is it? And neither is the Forest game either.
And what it is, I think, the course of the next 2 weeks, it's pragmatism versus idealism, isn't it? Because you've got Regis Le Bris, who last year demonstrated, we know how Le Bris would like his Sunderland team to look, but we also know that he will do what he feels is right to win a game of football. You're coming up against Ange Postecoglou. I actually think maybe it's unfair to put in the same bracket as Amorim, because Ange's Spurs team won the Europa League in a manner that Ange would not like them to play, but they showed that. I think
it took him a long time to get there and realise he had to be willing to do that, though, didn't it?
But I mean, Amorim, what was Amorim's quotes last week that he wouldn't change even if the Pope told him to? Which was bonkers. Whereas Le Bris will approach both of those games and think, right, what is the best? We're talking there about, do you go to a back three? Does he move through? He'll do what he thinks is the best to win both of those games, won't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And he'll adapt it as the game goes on if needs be, which we clearly saw in the second half against Villa. And he'll if it gets to the stage of the game where a point is looking like a good result, he'll do whatever he has to do to get that point. He's and that's not negative. That's not to say we don't want to win the game, but it's, that is just the way he manages. He, like you say, he's very pragmatic. He's very realistic. He's exactly what Sunderland need, isn't he, as a newly promoted club with what they've got and what they're trying to achieve this season. Of all the... I actually did a column this morning. It's on the Northern Echo website, kind of saying that signing players. Yes, Sunderland needed to sign a load of players this summer, but actually they needed to sign the right players. And probably more importantly, as we're seeing every week that passes, they needed to sign a group of players who weren't going to completely move away from everything that Sunderland were good at and that made them so strong last season. The togetherness, the fighting spirit, the backs to the wall mentality when you needed it, till the end. All of that. You did wonder when you bring in 14 new players from all around Europe, some young, some a bit older, some experienced, some inexperienced. Are you going to is it going to be really, really difficult to keep that togetherness, that sense of common purpose, all of that going? I think that's been Sunderland and probably particularly Le Bris's biggest success this summer, that everything that was good about the Sunderland team last season, you're seeing in this new team as well.
The biggest success of the last 18 months or so, though, is the appointment of Le Bris, isn't it? And the first few weeks of the season has shown that. We were talking earlier, weren't we, just in a conversation between ourselves, as to how Will Still has started at Southampton.
Yeah.
Fans are getting on his back already. It's early days. He might get him going, but they're struggling. Just makes you think, doesn't it, how different things could have been.
People talk about... people talk about the sliding doors moment in the playoff final, and clearly that's a very, very obvious one because of the completely different directions Sunderland and Sheffield United have gone in. But you do wonder if it was a massive sliding doors moment as well when Will Still decided, you know what, I'm going to stay here in League One. I'm not going to go and take this Sunderland job. And so it was then, right, okay, well, where are we going now as Christian Speakman and the board? Well, we're going to go to Regis Le Bris. That feels like as big a moment as anything that's happened to Sunderland in the last decade or so, doesn't it?
How long ago does that feel now? Like writing about Liam Rossini and Frank Lampard when his name's
bonkers. Absolutely bonkers, isn't it? Yeah.
But on Sunderland Roll, it's Forest next. I'm at the City Ground on Saturday, so I know it's only Monday and it's early doors, so we'll have plenty of build up to that on the Northern Echo site, and we are Sunderland in the build up to the game, and then obviously we'll be there at the weekend with full analysis of that. The latest offer is going to be running across the bottom any minute now when I find it, or am I going to be able to
hit the magic button?
Yeah. 2 ticks. Is that it there?
Yes. There we go.
No, that's not it. Anyway, it's a $5 for 5 months of Sunderland coverage, or it's 40% of our annual subscription. I'll put the link in the notes at the bottom. If you're watching on YouTube, then do subscribe if you haven't already. Just tap subscribe below the screen. And if you're listening on your podcast platforms, then rate and review and get in touch as well. We'll do a live one in the next couple of weeks answering your questions. So if there's anything you want us to have a chinwag about, then just give us a shout on socials or get involved in the comments below, and we'll get to that. But thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be back next week. Take care.